Hello, I'm Kat. Welcome to the Tulare Public Library's first virtual paint night. I'm so happy that we get to start this up. I've so missed doing paint nights with the community. So thank you for joining us. Tonight we're going to be painting this, this really cute kind of Valentine-inspired llama. So I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. I've got a wider flat brush and a narrower brush for detail work. I've got just a cup of water for rinsing my brush out. And then I have two paper plates. On this one I have a lot of white. I've got a little bit of a light brown, some tropical blue, and a dark red. And on my second one I have just a tiny bit of a leaf green and a dark brown. So getting started with this painting, I'm just going to get my brush just a little bit damp with some water, and then I'm going to start by painting a thumb shape. This is for our llama. So I advise using a lot of white paint. That will let you control the color that you put on after that. I like to think of white paint kind of as water. It helps with the density of the color that you have on. So just a thumb shape, pretty simple. It's gonna look amazing when you're done. We're just gonna start out with simple shapes. So once you have that all filled in with white paint, make sure I've got it all on there. There we go. Then I'm gonna take my white paint, I've already started that, you can see, white paint and just a little bit of my light brown. I'm going to mix that together until I've got it's pretty light tan color. You can see my brush still has plenty of white paint on it. I haven't bothered to wipe it off. I like to keep my wiping off to a minimum. And then I'm just going to take that and I'm just going to start sweeping. And to me that looks a little dark, so I'm just going to tap my brush in some more white paint and just kind of go. So I'm just doing short strokes like this. I'm adding more white because it is a lot darker than I wanted it to be. And I'm just kind of going to go through that whole thumb shape and just do this. If you want your llama a little bit darker, add more of that light brown paint. If you want your llama to be a little bit lighter, keep adding white to it. And just try and keep it kind of varied. That way it looks like a very furry llama. And I'm just taking those strokes and going pretty much straight down, maybe a little bit off to the side. When you get closer to the edge, what you can start doing is just pulling out a little bit so it looks nice and hairy because llamas are so shaggy. You can play around with the different colors and see what works best for you. If you feel like it's getting a little dark, add some white. If it's a little pale for you, add a little bit of the dark. We're just going to fill this whole area in with those short paint strokes to give us a nice furry llama. I don't have any music on with me right now, but I highly recommend you turn your radio on or find some music that you really enjoy. It can be so relaxing. Just to have that on and just be able to focus on the color and the sound. There we go. I'm going to leave this center here a little bit paler because that's where I'm going to put the llama's face. And I want that to stand out a little bit, so I am just going to make that a little bit lighter. But the rest of it I'm going to fill in with lots and lots of shaggy hair. And depending on how wet your paint is, you can go in and add a little bit more if you want to. If it's wet, it's gonna blend really well. If it's getting pretty dry, then it's not going to blend as well, and you might need to pick up a little bit more paint. So right now what we have is pretty much just a big hairy thumb. Let's see here. And if you want to give your llama just a little bit of a hairstyle, you can pop a few furry hairs in on top. There we go. So hopefully by now your llama's looking pretty furry. And we're gonna move on to the next step. Once again, mixing white and a little bit of that light brown. I'm gonna work on the ears, and the ears are just 2 triangles on the top of the head. I'm gonna, let's see, start there and pull it down. Nice little triangle. Start at the top, pull down. There we go. I'm just adding a little bit of darkness to this one. And this is a fun time to play around with some of your colors, because the ears aren't going to be totally flat and you want to add a little bit of dimension to them. So what I've done is on one side they're a little bit lighter, and on the other side they're a little bit darker. It's okay if you can see the lines of paint. That makes it look a little more homemade, so keep it going if you want to. I am going to rinse my brush right now. The nice thing about this is you can keep adding to it later if you want to, but a good artist knows when they're done, so don't feel like you have to keep adding things to it. If you are really satisfied with the way it looks, it's okay to walk away and then come back to it in a minute and see how you feel about it. So I want to do the inside of the ears, so I'm just going to take a little bit of my white paint with my smaller brush, and I'm going to pull it off to the side. And then I'm just going to add a touch of red to that. I want to do the inside of the llama's ear, and I want it to be just a nice pale pink. That is too dark for me, so I'm just going to add a little bit more white paint off to the side, and then I can decide if I want to use that darker pink in a minute. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to come in, and I'm just going to do a second triangle in the first one. Right now it's pretty pale, and that's just fine. I like that. I can add some more depth to it in a minute. So now I've got some pale pink on the inside of the ear. Still just a really simple triangle shape, following the curve of the head. And now I've got that pale pink in. And I think I want to add some of that darker pink. There we go. I'm just kind of blending that into what I already have. And that's giving the llama's ear a little bit more pop. Okay, So now I've got a hairy thumb with pointy ears. I'm blowing on my painting just to let it dry because I'm going to be adding a wreath of flowers to the llama's head. So I'm just going to let that dry for just a moment. And then because I do have limited colors today, I'm going to be sticking with red and pink flowers. But if you have your own colors at home, feel free to make this wreath whatever shade of color you want it to be. Since I do have a wet spot right in the middle, I'm going to start over on the side and let that dry a little bit. I don't want to add any brown to my flowers. So I'm going to take a little bit more of the white paint, pull it off to the side, and add it to the pink that I already have going. A little bit more red, and I'm just going to get started. The flowers that I'm doing are really easy. They've got a lot of texture and a lot of depth of color. Very easy to do. You can see I've got dark pink, some white, and then the dark red there. I'm just going to keep playing with all of these colors and see what happens. So starting out right here, I'm just going to make a circle. And this is kind of a medium pink. There we go. And then I'm going to add to that. I'm going to add a little bit, I haven't rinsed my brush, I'm just dipping it in the white, and I'm just going to start going in, doing little arc shapes, just like this. Now adding white to this is making it a paler pink flower. But if I wanted to make it darker, I could add the red, or I could even mix up a darker shade of pink if I wanted to. So just playing with these colors, and just keep the paint pretty thick if you want to, and that lets you kind of shift it around. Even going to dip a little bit into my dark red, and you can see how that just starts adding to it. The more you play with it, the more it blends in. If you want it to really stand out, you can just kind of leave it as it is. Okay, and so that is a medium pink flower. I'm going to make a pale pink flower. Adding a little bit of white, and this one I want to be a small pale pink flower. So I'm just doing it slightly overlapping. I'm going to add lots of little white curvy details to this one. Just a hint of that dark pink in the middle. So I'm using the exact same colors, and we've got a pale pink and a slightly darker pink. Now I want to do a really dark pink. I'm going to do another circle. This one I want to be a little bit bigger. So just starting with my basic circle. And you can do as many of these as you want. You can have a bunch of tiny flowers. You can have just 2 or 3 big flowers. So there's starting with my main one. It's nice and thick. And then I'm just going to reach into my dark red and just start pulling that around. It lightens up because it's mixing with the lighter pink underneath, but it's much darker. you go. Here's another one. I'm going to rinse my brush a little off right now because it's darker than I want my next flower to be. Mix a little more white in there. And I'm going to start on another one. I'm just barely dipping my brush into some color to bring that in. And you can do light and dark together and see how that looks. Gonna do two more. I think it looks really pretty with all of these, the pink flowers, but I think it would also look amazing if you did have other colors, some bright yellows and some fuchsia. I think that would look really great. Because I have such a pale pink ear, I am going to add a little extra red to the top just so this stands out a little bit. I want that contrast between light and dark. And one more. I've got it sticking out off the side a little bit so it looks like it's able to go all the way around the llama's head. It gives it a little more dimension when it sticks out like that. If you want to take a little more time with these flowers, you're always welcome to pause the video and work with it for a while before you turn it back on. All right, so there we go. I've got a couple of flowers there on my wreath, rinsing my brush out all the way. We're going to get started on the llama's face now. So I'm going to scoop up a little bit of my white, bring it over here, over to where I've already kind of mixed some of that light brown. Add a little bit more. I'm going to go for a nice medium dark brown, something between the white and that light brown that we've got going on already. We want it to be dark enough that it stands out against the llama's fur. So I'm going to start with this, see how that works. I'm just going to make an avocado shape right about here, not halfway down, but right about here. I'm going to start. I'm going to do that, and then just an avocado shape. Just kind of like this, and then it's going to widen. There we go. So just like that. The thicker your paint, the more easily it's going to flow. So if you find that you're getting like drag marks, you might want to dip your brush back into the paint. That'll go on nice and smoothly. I've got my avocado shape painted, but I feel like it's a little darker than I'd like it to be. I'm just going to dip directly into my white paint and start at the top. Just bring it in, and I'll lighten it up a little bit. Once again, if your paint is nice and thick, it should blend really well. Just be able to make it more of the color that you'd like it to be. Once again, it's okay if you see your brush strokes. I think that makes it look more like you've been working hard at making something yourself. So there we go. So I've got my thumb shape, my triangles, my circles, and then now my avocado shape. There we go. Rinse my brush again. I'm going to give it a few minutes to dry. And while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm actually going to get started on the next step, which will be the background. Now I selected this really bright Caribbean blue because it's going to look fantastic against the brown of the llama. I'm using lots of white. I still have some left over here, and I'm going to dip into that with some of my other colors, but because I want my background to be a little bit lighter than what I've got this color as, I'm just going to start mixing these two together right in the middle, because I want to be able to control how pale this color is. I'm going to add a little more white. And if you find that you have run out of white, that's just fine. Do whatever you can to make the color what you want it to be. I like making extra, that way I don't run out. Usually I end up having to throw some of the color I've mixed away, but it's much better doing it that way than running out halfway through and realizing that you don't have enough to mix up the color that you want. So be careful with the side of your hands, because anything that is wet and you touch it, you may transfer it to something that you've already painted and that you really like, so you don't want to do that. So I'm just going to get started with this color that is slightly lighter blue, and I'm just going to get started. I'm going to follow along with what I've got pretty closely. It's okay to give yourself a little bit of of room so you don't paint over. So you might want to paint really slowly and carefully when you're actually right up next to what you've already worked on. And right now I am using that wide brush, but if you feel like you want to get a little bit closer or you want a little more control, go ahead and use your smaller paintbrush. Fun thing with this background, and if you've got these colors here, you can add stuff to the back too. You can do big polka dots back there if you want to, or anything you want just to make it a little more fun. I'm just going to keep mine very simple. Now that we're getting to the llama's hair, I'm just going to I don't want too much paint on my brush, but I'm just going to cut in a little bit, just like this. I'm going to be a little bit uneven, and that's going to let that llama fur show. There we go. And then I'm just going to come back in and fill that in. With my blue paint. Definitely want to keep this llama nice and shaggy. Your paper may curl a little bit when you have a lot of paint on it, but it should dry pretty flat. There we go. So you can see along here, you've still got a lot of that texture of the llama's fur. I'm gonna dig back into my light color here. And because I haven't taped this down, I'm able to move it around, which I really like to do. So I'm actually gonna flip it upside down for a second and get started over here. Once again, get close, but you don't necessarily want to go too far over. It's okay if there's a little bit of pale line between the two. Just because if you've worked really hard on something, you don't want to just cover it up right away. There we go. And again, I'm just doing strokes in one direction. That way I can still get that furry llama texture. And then just fill in. And this part is going to be a little tricky. It's got the most difference in shapes. I'm just going to do it as carefully as I can. Fill that all in. Okay, and that's my background finished. Like I said, you're able to add other details to the back if you want to, just by mixing in a little more dark or a little more white in with the color you already have. Just gonna give that a second to dry. Rinse my brush out all the way, in case I want to use it later. I don't want any blue color popping out. There we go. Now, because it's just after Valentine's Day and I'm still having the feelings about Valentine's Day, I'm gonna actually make a little heart-shaped nose on this llama. You're welcome to do a different shape if you want to, but I'm gonna do a heart-shaped color. I'm gonna mix up a little bit of that beautiful pink that we had from earlier. And then right about here, oh, I've still got some wet paint over there. Like I said, if you find yourself getting your hand wet, be really careful where you put your wrist after that because you don't want to transfer that color over. So I've got this nice pink and I'm going to start right here with a heart shape. There we go. And I'm going to add a little more color variation to that just to have it pop out a little bit. All right, I've got a nice heart-shaped llama nose. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to put a few leaves in this wreath so that it stands out a little bit from the ears. I'm going to dip into some of that leftover white that I had, bring it over to my green. Just a little bit. It's nice to be able, once again, to play with the different shades, and it can add a lot more to your painting. I'm just going to mix those colors up a little bit until I get a nice medium green. And then I can pull in more white if I want to, or more green if I want to make it a little darker. This is going to be my nice medium base. And be careful, your paint might still be wet. So I'm going to start with a leaf here. I'm just going to kind of go carefully around that because I don't want to ruin the edge of my flower. Just wiggle that brush around a little bit and then just pull it down into a leaf shape. You can add a little bit of the darker color over on one side if you want to, and that gives it a little bit more interest. Once again, make sure you have plenty of paint on your brush if you want to have nice, smooth strokes. Notice my brush is getting a little dry. And again, just kind of play around with the color and the texture. I'm rolling my brush, my pointed brush. I'm rolling it in the paint, I'm rolling it toward me, and then I'm drawing it out, and that helps give me a nice point if I want to do even more detail work. You can add as many leaves as you want. I'm just going to do a few more. Green's my favorite color, so it's always hard for me to stop using it. And I'm just going to add one more. Let that paint dry on the llama's nose a little bit. And I lied, I want one more little tiny one right here. All right. Got some leaves on my flower wreath. Rinsing my brush. And I'm going to go into that dark chocolate brown. Now because I want this to be a little bit thinner, I'm actually going to dip my liner brush in the water. And I'm not going to really blot it out. I just want there to be, I want it to be saturated with water. And then I'm going to start pulling some of that dark brown out. And I'm just going to mix it up with that water because I want to thin it a little bit. That will make it much easier to spread, especially when you want long, steady stroke and you don't want to break it up and have to start over again. So I'm mixing that water in and making it a little bit thinner without losing my color. And again, I'm going to roll the brush towards me and pull it out to a point. Now starting right here at the base of the heart, I'm going to pull it down in kind of a U shape, like this. And pull it up one side of that avocado shape. And I'm going to start right about here. And then meet up with it. Okay, now I'm going to start on the llama's eyes. Again, it's okay to have a little bit of water in there, thin it out a bit. I'm gonna do kind of an eye shape, but then I'm just gonna take this and I'm gonna keep coming out with it. Pull it all the way out here because I wanna give this llama a nice, long, shaggy eyelash. And I'm gonna go over that one more time. There we go. And then from there, I'm going to make an eyeball shape. Llamas have really big eyes, so it's okay to have it take up a lot of space. It almost looks more like sunglasses right now, but that's all right. There. I'll roll my brush again. And just do a few more eyelashes. Now we're just going to repeat that over on the other side. Turn my paper a little bit. I'm going to line it up as best as I can. Again, we're going to do a nice big circle for the eye. And a few more eyelashes on this side. All right, and we're nearly finished. I want to make sure that my llama has a little twinkle in his eye. I'm going to rinse that brush out. And I'm going to go directly into my white paint. I want to make sure my brush is dry because I don't want it to drip where I don't want it. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of a sparkle to this eye. And a matching sparkle on this side. Because it's a Valentine's llama, I'm going to give him a little extra twinkle. So I'm going to take it and just gently dot There we go. There you have it. You've got a very easy Valentine's Day llama. It was so fun to do this project with you. Once again, I hope you were able to follow along at home with your own colors and paper if you weren't able to come in and pick up what we have here. And I really hope you enjoyed this project today. Thanks. Once again, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I hope you had a chance to relax and enjoy painting by yourself or with the group. Please check out our other crafts and hopefully more paintings coming soon. You can find us on our website or on our YouTube channel. Thank you and have a great night.